When I got pregnant, my husband's parent said, "This baby will have my pediatrician. Yours sounds like a quack." My husband laughed and said, "She's got a point." I glared and replied, "Then you can both attend the appointments without me." His smile faded. My name's Riley Darnell. I'm 39 years old, and up until last year, I thought my life was not perfect, but manageable. Comfortable, even. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in a modest two-story house with more personality than polish. I've always liked things a little rough around the edges. It's more honest that way. My job as a vet tech at a small animal clinic isn't glamorous, but I love it. Animals make more sense to me than people ever have. They don't lie. They don't manipulate. They don't smile at your face while digging a fee into your back. People do that. Victor, my now husband, was the kind of man people called a good guy. Stable job, good manners, decent salary, not a drinker or a cheater, at least not in the beginning. We met in college, both going through the motions of being young and broke and full of opinions about the world. I liked his quiet, calculated energy. He liked that I didn't need him. That's what he said anyway. Looking back, I think he liked the idea of someone who wouldn't expect too much emotional investment. We got married after 3 years. It wasn't some grand romantic proposal. No violin players or rose petals. He just looked at me one night after we filed our taxes and said, "You know, we're already doing everything married couples do. Want to make it official?" And I said yes. Not because it was a fairy tale, but because it was safe. And at the time, safe felt like enough. But years pass. You grow. You stretch. And sometimes the person next to you doesn't grow with you. Or worse, they dig their heels in, determined not to move at all. By the time I hit 38, I'd buried the idea of being a mother so deep inside me, I'd almost forgotten it was there. I always assumed if it was meant to happen, it would. But then one afternoon, I was sitting in the break room at the clinic, eating a peanut butter sandwich and watching a client's kid try to feed dog treats to his baby sister. Something about the way she giggled, a squeaky, bubbling kind of joy, hit me like a freight train. I wanted that. Not just a baby, but the laughter, the chaos, the mess, all of it. Victor wasn't immediately on board. He said things like, "We're not in our 20s anymore, and what if there's something wrong with the baby? And you know, my parents had me late, and it was hard on them." I waited, let him sit with it. And after about 6 months of awkward half-conversations and a few teary nights on my part, he agreed. We stopped using birth control. I tracked my ovulation like it was my second job. I cut back on coffee, started taking prenatal vitamins before I even had anything to be prenatal about. And then, after 3 months of peeing on sticks and bracing myself for disappointment, I saw 2 pink lines. I stared at them for 5 minutes, silent, my heart hammering in my chest. Then I walked into the living room where Victor was scrolling through something on his laptop. "I'm pregnant." He looked up, blinked once. "Really?" I nodded, biting my lip. His mouth twitched into something like a smile. "Huh, guess we're doing this." And that was it. No lifting me up in his arms. No tears. No excited calls to family. Just a huh. I told myself it was fine. Everyone reacts differently. But a small, dark seed of doubt had been planted. 2 weeks later, we had dinner at his parents' house. Judith, his mother, is the kind of woman who speaks in statements, not suggestions. She always wears beige sweaters that probably cost more than my monthly rent in college, and she has this way of looking at people like they're slightly disappointing, but she's willing to put up with them. For now, dinner was baked salmon with some sort of quinoa side dish and roasted vegetables that tasted like sadness. About halfway through the meal, Victor cleared his throat and said, "So, Riley's pregnant." Judith didn't even look up from her plate. "Well, of course she is. About time." His dad, Marvin, muttered something that sounded like congratulations, but it was hard to tell with the chewing. Then Judith looked up. "This baby will have Dr. Keener as a pediatrician. He's still practicing." He was Victor's doctor. I laughed. I thought she was joking. "I've already got someone in mind," I said, sipping my water. "Dr. Patel, at the community health clinic. I've worked with her. She's fantastic." Judith raised an eyebrow. "A clinic doctor? Riley, really? That's hardly the place for a Darnell baby." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "She means well," Victor said quickly, half smiling. "Dr. Keener's been around forever. He knows what he's doing." I stared at him. "So does Dr. Patel." Judith tilted her head. "Some of these newer doctors, they just rush through things. Miss the small stuff." I narrowed my eyes. "Then you can both attend the appointments without me." The words came out of my mouth before I even processed them. Cold. Sharp. The room froze. Victor's smile dropped. Judith blinked, clearly not used to being spoken to like that. Marvin cleared his throat and stared harder at his plate. "No need to be dramatic," Victor muttered. "I'm not being dramatic," I said, standing up. "I'm being clear." We left shortly after, driving home in silence. The silence continued into the following days. Victor didn't apologize. He didn't even bring it up. And when I finally mentioned that I'd scheduled our first ultrasound, he just nodded and said, "Let me know if you want me to come." Want him to come? It was our baby. But the moment that really broke something in me happened a few days later. I came home from work and found Judith in our living room. She'd used the spare key again and was folding laundry like it was her house. "You really shouldn't be lifting heavy baskets," she said, without looking up. "Judith, you can't just come in here whenever you want." She looked at me, her expression polite but firm. "It's for the baby, Riley." That was her answer to everything. It's for the baby. It gave her license to steamroll me in every decision, from baby names to nursery colors to feeding preferences. Victor never stopped her. Sometimes I caught him smiling when she went off on one of her rants, like it amused him. Like this whole thing, me struggling to establish boundaries, was somehow adorable. I started to feel like a guest in my own pregnancy. The night Judith let herself into our home without asking was the moment I realized something. I didn't just marry Victor. I married his family. His mother, specifically. And somehow, somewhere along the way, he'd silently handed her a level of authority over our lives that I'd never agreed to. After that, things began to shift. I started locking the front door during the day, knowing full well it would send a message. She noticed, of course. Judith always noticed. The next time she showed up, she rang the doorbell like she was a stranger. When I answered, she smiled tightly. "Did you change the locks?" "No," I said flatly. "I started using them." She didn't respond. Just stepped inside like nothing happened and handed me a catalog of luxury strollers. I marked the ones that are best rated. "Victor and I both agree you shouldn't skimp on something so important." I didn't even look at it. "You and Victor?" I asked. Funny, because no one asked me. "You're tired. You're hormonal. You're not thinking clearly. I'm pregnant, Judith. Not incapacitated." Victor came home halfway through that argument, and instead of backing me up, he sighed and rubbed his temples like we were two toddlers fighting over a toy. "Can't we all just get along? This isn't helping the baby." And that became his line. Anytime I tried to push back, anytime I said no, or I don't agree, or I'm the mother, he'd pull out the baby card like it was a magic phrase that was supposed to shut me down. Things escalated fast from there. It was small at first, little decisions that got made without me. Judith picked out the crib. Victor booked appointments without checking with me. I found out through a group text that we'd be having a co-ed baby shower hosted by Judith's church friends, even though I explicitly told him I didn't want anything big. "Why are you acting like this?" he asked one night when I came home from the clinic and found his mom's casserole in our fridge and the new baby monitor she'd dropped off sitting on our counter like some sort of offering. "Like what?" "Like you're under attack." "Because I am." He rolled his eyes. "You always do this, Riley. Turn everything into a battle." "Because I'm fighting for space in my own damn life." He stood there for a second, blinking like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then he just walked away. That was Victor's signature move. Withdraw. Deflect. Wait for the storm to pass. But I wasn't going to be the one to come running anymore. And that's when I started digging. Not intentionally at first. But once you start noticing the lies, they're hard to unsee. One evening, I was sorting through receipts for our insurance claims and noticed a few charges that didn't make sense. 2 hotel stays in Charlotte. A spa charge. A restaurant we'd never eaten at. When I brought it up, Victor said it was for work. Conferences. Then why are they booked under your personal card? I asked. He shrugged. Company prefers it that way. Reimburses later. It sounded plausible, but something felt off. I didn't want to be that wife. The one who snoops through phones. Who checks mileage on the car. Who Googles hotel names in a panic. But I did it anyway. Because sometimes your gut won't let you rest until you prove it wrong or right. That's when I found the messages. They weren't sexual. Not outright. But they were intimate. Familiar. Full of inside jokes and emojis that made my stomach churn. Her name was Kendra. She worked with him. Apparently they had talked during late-night projects and vented over drinks in hotel bars. "I'm here if you need to get away," she wrote in one message. Another said, "I know it's hard being around her right now. You don't deserve that kind of stress." Her. Me. I confronted him the next morning, phone in hand, messages pulled up. He didn't even deny it. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." "She's a friend. She listens." You just react to everything." My hands were shaking. I'm pregnant with your child. Of course I'm reacting. He sighed. I never asked for this kind of pressure. You pushed for the baby. I just stared at him, heart pounding. So now this is my fault? He didn't answer. You're cheating on me, I said quietly. I didn't sleep with her. But you were going to. Silence. And there it was. The truth in the space between his words. The worst kind of betrayal, emotional, quiet, drawn out like a slow leak until everything drowns. After that, I checked out. Emotionally. Mentally. I stopped trying to include him in decisions. I scheduled appointments without him. I told Judith, to her face, that she wouldn't be in the delivery room. I told her if she showed up uninvited, I'd have security remove her. Victor called me cruel. I called it self-preservation. One night, I couldn't sleep. I went into the nursery and just stood there, staring at the half-finished crib and the bookshelf filled with books I didn't pick, toys I didn't buy, clothes Judith had monogrammed with initials I didn't even know if I wanted to use. And I broke. Not the kind of dramatic crying you see in movies. Silent. Ugly. Shaking with the weight of everything I'd lost and everything I was still trying to hold on to. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I was more afraid of raising a child with Victor than I was of raising one without him. After that night in the nursery, something inside me clicked. Maybe snapped. I don't know. But I stopped feeling sad. The sadness turned to something else clearer, sharper. Like ice melting into a blade. I wasn't going to play nice anymore. 2 weeks later, Victor had the nerve to suggest a reset weekend, his way of proposing we drive out to Boone for a night or two to reconnect. I booked a cabin, he said, over dinner, like that was going to fix everything. No phones. Just you and me. Clean air. Maybe talk things through. I stared at him across the table, 9 weeks pregnant, nauseous, exhausted, and still picturing him laughing over drinks with Kendra while I was home Googling best prenatal vitamins. Are you out of your mind? I said. His fork froze midair. What? I'm not going anywhere with you. And I'm certainly not going to pretend this is some romantic break. I'm pregnant, Victor. Not stupid. He set his fork down and rubbed his face like I was the difficult one. Like he was tired of dealing with me. I'm trying here, Riley. You think this has been easy for me? I let out a short, humorless laugh. No, I'm sure your emotional affair has been incredibly stressful. He stood up fast enough to make the chair screech. It wasn't an affair. Because you didn't stick your dick in her? I shot back. You were building a whole other relationship while I was counting weeks on a fertility tracker. You let your mother take over my pregnancy, and you had the audacity to tell another woman that you're stressed about me? You think a weekend in Boone's gonna undo that? He didn't say anything. I walked away, went upstairs, and locked the door behind me. He slept on the couch that night. Then the next. Then it became permanent. Judith, of course, noticed the tension. She called me one morning while I was brushing my teeth. I just want to make sure everything's okay, she said, her voice sugary sweet. Victor said you've been hormonal. I spit out my toothpaste and wiped my mouth. Judith, let me ask you something. Did you always expect to be the one raising our child? A pause. Well, of course not. Because that's what it feels like. She exhaled hard, like I'd just accused her of something unfair. Riley, I've raised 2 children. I know what works. I'm trying to help. But if you're not willing to accept support, I don't need support. I need space. You know what your problem is? She snapped, and there it was, the real voice, the one she kept tucked behind fake politeness. You've never appreciated what you have. Victor is a good man. Then maybe you should have married him. Click. I hung up before she could respond. That same week, I made the quietest, boldest move of my life. I went to see a lawyer. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends. Not my coworkers. I didn't even call my sister, who would have immediately offered me a couch and a gin and tonic. I just sat in a slightly too warm office in downtown Asheville, hands folded in my lap, while the lawyer, a woman named Candace with hair in a tight bun and a gaze sharp enough to cut through stone, read over the notes I'd written. I'm not looking for a fight, I told her. I just want to protect myself. And the baby. She looked up. You do know North Carolina is a marital property state, right? I nodded. So if you divorce now, before the baby is born, it affects custody differently than if you wait. I understand. You don't want to wait? No. I don't want him in the delivery room. I don't want his mother deciding what my child wears or eats. I don't want to feel like a guest in my own life anymore. She studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay then. We can start with a separation agreement. It'll give you a little breathing room. I exhaled. First deep breath I'd taken in weeks. When I got home, Victor was in the garage. I walked past him, into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water, and turned around. I saw a lawyer today. He blinked. What? I want a separation. He stood there in his grease-stained jeans and wrinkled shirt, looking at me like I'd just started speaking another language. Wait, what are you talking about? You heard me. He stepped forward. No, you're not thinking clearly. Don't ever say that to me again, I said, my voice low but steady. This isn't a tantrum. This is me making a decision. A real one. For me. For the baby. You don't get to cheat and gaslight and then act like I'm being unreasonable. He stared at me, jaw clenched, eyes wet. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know. But you're really doing this? I am. He shook his head, ran a hand through his hair. What are we gonna tell people? That we're separating, I said. Because we are. Judith called me that night, wailing like I'd just KL'd her dog. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said. I'm removing myself from a family that never accepted me in the first place. She started ranting about the baby, about legacy, about how I was being selfish. I just set the phone down on the counter and let her yell into the void until the voicemail beeped. Over the next few weeks, I moved into the guest room. Started packing small boxes, first my books, then some of the baby things I actually picked myself. I rented a short-term apartment on the other side of town. It was nothing fancy. 1 bedroom. Hardwood floors that creaked. A bathroom with an ancient mirror that made me look more tired than I felt. But it was mine. The day I left, Victor didn't say much. He stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets, watching as I carried the last box out. You don't have to do this, he said. But I did. He opened his mouth to say something else, but nothing came out. Just air. Just regret. Maybe. As I walked down the steps, I heard Judith yelling from the living room. She's running away. Like she always does. And maybe she was right. Or maybe I was finally running toward something. Life in the new apartment was quiet at first. Not peaceful, just quiet. I still woke up in the middle of the night, hand on my stomach, heart racing, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Doubt is sneaky like that. It creeps in when you finally get a taste of freedom. But then I'd remember the look on Victor's face when I told him I was done. The silence when I gave him a chance to fight for me, and he didn't take it. The way Judith clutched her pearls like she was starring in a bad soap opera every time I stood up for myself. That silence? It was my answer. I stayed in therapy. Took my prenatal classes solo. Showed up to OB appointments with my best friend, Layla, who brought snacks and trashy magazines and asked all the questions Victor never bothered to. Meanwhile, Victor had started sending me the occasional, just checking in texts, which I ignored unless it was about the baby. Judith emailed me a formal request to attend the birth. I deleted it without replying. Then, exactly 3 weeks before my due date, I got the letter. A custody petition. Filed by Victor. Co-signed by Judith as a witness. I stood in my kitchen, 9 months pregnant, holding a manila envelope with the seal of Buncombe County Family Court, and felt my blood turn to fire. They were asking for joint custody. Full visitation rights. Judith's name was listed on the form, detailing how I had intentionally excluded a caring grandmother from her grandchild's life. There were references to my emotional instability, my lack of family support, and, get this, my potential medical negligence for not choosing their pediatrician. That was it. That was the last straw. I called my lawyer. Time to go on offense, I said. Candace, God bless her, didn't blink. I've been waiting for you to say that. For the next 2 weeks, we built a case. A real one. Documented everything. The surprise visits. The messages. The hotel stays. The screenshots. Even the voicemail Judith left screaming at me, which, bless her petty soul, started with, "This is exactly why I never thought you were fit to raise a child." We subpoenaed Kendra. Turned out, she had no idea I even existed for the first 6 months of their friendship. And when she found out I was pregnant, she backed off immediately. She gave us a signed statement saying Victor had absolutely been crossing boundaries. I also provided statements from coworkers, my boss at the clinic, my therapist, and even Layla, who had accompanied me to every single prenatal appointment since the split. But the best part? That was the surprise I saved for last. See, while Judith and Victor were busy playing legal chess, I was talking to a journalist friend of Layla's who ran a community spotlight column in a local Asheville magazine. We did an interview, anonymously, of course. It was about maternal autonomy, pregnancy boundaries, and women who are undermined by their partners and in-laws. It wasn't personal. No names. But the story was familiar enough that anyone who knew us would connect the dots. Judith saw it. Oh, she saw it. She showed up outside my apartment the next morning, furious, clutching her pearls like they might leap from her neck and attack me. How dare you humiliate our family like this? I just stared at her, arms crossed over my swollen belly, my body days away from labor, my eyes calm and cold. Call it a public service, I said. She opened her mouth to spew more venom, but I held up a hand. You no longer have access to me. Or this baby. If a court decides otherwise, I'll comply. Until then, you can scream at the sky. She turned on her heel and stormed off. Victor, to his rare credit, called me later that night. She's upset, he said quietly. I'm not, I replied. And I'm done paying for your silence. He didn't know what that meant. But he would. Labor hit on a Tuesday afternoon. It was fast, painful, and surreal. Layla was there the entire time, gripping my hand, wiping sweat off my face, coaching my breathing like a damn champion. The delivery was intense but smooth. And when they handed me my daughter, all wrinkly and furious and perfect, I cried the kind of tears that shake something loose in your soul. I named her Marin. No one else had a say. Victor found out the next morning through text, like I'd promised. He asked if he could come visit. I said no. I'd listed him as the father on the birth certificate, but until the court ruled otherwise, that was it. No visits. No photos. No decisions. 2 weeks later, we stood in front of a judge. Victor looked tired. Judith sat behind him, trying to appear composed, but the way she kept adjusting her necklace told me she was sweating bullets. My lawyer made our case. Calm, clean, documented. We didn't argue against shared custody. We simply argued that it shouldn't begin immediately. That trust needed to be rebuilt. That stability for the child had to come first. Then we presented the documentation, emotional manipulation, controlling behavior, unsolicited interference, mental distress during a vulnerable time. My therapist testified. So did Layla. Victor's lawyer tried to spin the story. He said I was being vindictive, that I was alienating Victor from his child. And then, Candace brought out the voicemail from Judith. The courtroom went dead quiet. The judge, a middle-aged woman with glasses and a no-nonsense tone, took a long pause before speaking. Mr. Darnell, she said, it's clear that you and your mother have exercised a level of control over Ms. Darnell that is deeply inappropriate, especially during a high-risk and emotionally taxing pregnancy. Joint custody will be reconsidered after 6 months of monitored visitation and proof of parenting courses. You will have no decision-making power regarding medical or educational choices during that period. Do you understand? He nodded, jaw tight. Judith tried to stand, but the judge waved her down. As for you, ma'am, you have no legal standing. If you harass or attempt to contact Ms. Darnell directly or indirectly again, you will face a restraining order. I didn't smile. Not then. I waited until I walked out of that courtroom, daughter in my arms, son on my face, Layla beside me. And then I smiled. That was almost a year ago. Marin's crawling now, saying weird baby versions of words, pulling my hair when she wants attention. And every time she laughs, I remember that moment in the vet clinic when I saw that little girl giggling at the dog treats. I remember thinking I wanted all the mess and joy and chaos. I got it. Victor visits once a week now. We meet in a supervised facility, and he's doing the work. I give him that. But the door to us is closed. Firmly. Permanently. Judith? I haven't seen her since court. Last I heard, she'd been telling anyone who'd listen that I was mentally unstable and had turned her son against her. But the funny thing is, no one seems to believe her anymore. Turns out, when you stand up for yourself long enough, people stop seeing you as the problem and start seeing the truth. I didn't just walk away from a bad relationship. I burned the blueprint they tried to hand me. And built my own damn house from the ashes.